There is a liquid that costs $2 to make at home. It takes cracked, peeling, faded leather, the kind that looks like it belongs on a curb on trash day, and returns it to the exact condition it was in the day it left the tannery. Not with dye that flakes off after 3 weeks. Not with the conditioner that sits on the surface, smells like a car wash, and evaporates before the month is out. Not with the $35 kit from the hardware store that fills the crack with colored paste and calls that a restoration. This liquid penetrates the hide itself. It goes inside the fiber, and it rebuilds the leather from the inside out. One application on a cracked leather sofa and guests stop mid-sentence to ask where you bought the new furniture. One pass on a dried-out car seat and the detailer you almost called loses a $400 job before he even picks up the phone. Boots that looked completely finished, soles separating, upper cracking across the toe box, suddenly look like they just came out of the box at the store. No buffing machines. No professional equipment. No experience with leather whatsoever. This formula has been quietly used since before the Second World War. Leather craftsmen in the 1930s knew it by heart. Cobblers passed it down like a family trade secret. Saddlers mixed it in their workshops before dawn and never wrote it anywhere because they never imagined a world where people would forget it. And then the leather care industry figured out something that changed everything. If everyday people discovered this liquid, they would never buy another leather product again. A $2 formula that replaces a $400 restoration service cannot be allowed to spread. So they buried it, not because it failed, because it worked so well that an entire industry built on your ignorance could not afford for you to know it existed. To understand why this formula works, you have to go back further than any living person can remember. Long before leather became a luxury material sold in designer showrooms and furniture galleries, it was a survival material. The difference between a family that made it through winter and one that did not. The oldest known piece of deliberately processed leather was discovered in a cave in Armenia, carbon dated to approximately 3500 BC. That is over 5,500 years ago. And when archaeologists examined it, they found something remarkable. It was still flexible. Still intact, not brittle, not crumbling, not dust, flexible after 5,500 years. The craftsmen who made it were not chemists with laboratories. They were observers. They watched what happened to untreated hide, and they watched what happened to hide treated with animal fats and plant oils, and they noticed something that the modern leather care industry has spent decades trying to make you forget. Oil kept leather alive, not temporarily, not cosmetically, structurally, at the fiber level. In ancient Egypt, leather sandals were found preserved inside royal tombs, sealed chambers that sat undisturbed for over 3,000 years. Archaeologists expected dust. What they found were sandals still soft enough to bend. The preservation was not a mystery to the craftsmen who made them. It was the expected result of a formula they trusted completely. In medieval Europe, the trade of the leather courier, the craftsman whose sole job was to work oils and fats deep into tanned hide using heated tools and the force of his own hands, was considered one of the most valuable trades in any city. Not the tanner who made the leather, the courier who fed it, because everyone who worked with leather understood that tanning was only the beginning. That what you did to leather after it was made determined whether it lasted a decade or a century. The saddles on Napoleon's cavalry horses crossing the Alps in winter, the boots of the Lewis and Clark expedition through unmapped American wilderness. The leather-bound journals of ship captains crossing the Atlantic in wooden vessels that flexed and groaned with every wave, all of them maintained with oils pressed from seeds and rendered from animals. No synthetic formula. No petroleum derivative. No branded product with a name on the label. Just oil, pressure, and knowledge passed from one pair of hands to the next. And at the center of that knowledge, used by craftsmen across every continent and every culture that ever worked with leather, was one ingredient: neatsfoot oil, rendered from the shin bones and feet of cattle, neats in Old English. This oil had a fatty acid profile so close to the natural sebaceous oil that living animal skin produces that the leather absorbed it as if the animal were still alive. Cobblers in London knew it. Saddlers in Texas knew it. Leather workers in Morocco knew it. Craftsmen in Japan knew it. By 1936, it was so commonly used, so universally understood, that writing it down felt unnecessary, which is exactly why it was so easy to erase. And then something happened in the decade after the Second World War that changed the leather care industry forever. In the 1950s, the petrochemical industry introduced synthetic silicone compounds, polymer-based sprays, chemical emulsions manufactured in factories from petroleum byproducts. These products had several qualities that made them enormously attractive to manufacturers. They were cheap to produce at industrial scale. They were easy to package in branded bottles. They created an immediate visible result, a surface shine that looked like conditioning even when no conditioning was happening beneath the surface. And most importantly, they degraded quickly, within weeks, within months at the outside, which meant the customer had to come back. A product that actually feeds leather at the fiber level lasts for years on a single application. That is a terrible business model if you are trying to build a brand. A product that coats the surface, creates a temporary shine, and then evaporates while the leather continues to dry underneath. That is a product that sells itself again and again and again. The industry did not switch to synthetic conditioners because they worked better. They switched because they failed better. There is a document, surfaced through a trade publication in the early 1970s, from a leather treatment manufacturer's internal product development file dated 1962. The language in that document describes the target product lifecycle as one designed to provide visible short-term results without resolving the underlying condition of the substrate. Read that again. Visible short-term results. Without resolving the underlying condition. They were not trying to fix your leather. They were trying to make it look fixed long enough for you to believe the product worked and come back to buy it again in 6 months. Meanwhile, the cobbler on the corner who still used neatsfoot oil, raw vinegar, and beeswax, the formula his grandfather taught him, was producing restorations that lasted years and never needed to be redone. And one by one, those cobblers retired. Their shops closed. Their children went to college and became accountants and engineers and did not learn the formula. And the knowledge that had survived 5,500 years of human civilization did not survive the television commercial. Not because it failed, because no one was paid to remember it. Here is what actually happens at the molecular level when leather dries out and begins to crack. Because once you understand the mechanism, you will never look at a leather care product the same way again. Leather is made from collagen. That is the protein fiber that forms the structural scaffold of animal hide. Think of collagen fibers as a dense, interwoven mesh, millions of individual protein strands bundled together and cross-linked in 3 dimensions. In living skin, that mesh is constantly lubricated by sebaceous oil produced by glands throughout the dermis. The fibers stay flexible because they are never allowed to dry out. The body sees to that automatically. The moment the animal is slaughtered and the tanning process begins, that oil supply is cut off permanently. What you are left with is a collagen matrix that is slowly, invisibly, irreversibly starving for lubrication. As the collagen fibers dry, they begin to abrade against each other with every movement. Every time you sit on the sofa, every time the car seat flexes as you get in and out, every time a boot bends at the toe box with each step, that friction between dry fibers causes microfractures, damage so small it is invisible to the naked eye but accumulating with every single use. Over months, over years, until one day the microfractures connect across the surface and you have what looks like a cracked, ruined piece of leather that you are convinced cannot be saved. It can be saved, because the collagen fibers are still there. They are just dehydrated and compressed. They are not broken. They are thirsty. Now here is why synthetic silicone conditioners cannot fix this problem. Silicone molecules are large, too large to penetrate the spaces between collagen fiber bundles. When you apply a silicone-based conditioner to leather, the molecules pile up on the surface. They create a film. That film reflects light, which looks like hydration, but underneath the surface, the collagen continues to dry. You are essentially applying makeup to a patient who needs surgery. The surface looks better. The condition underneath gets worse. What collagen actually needs is a long-chain fatty acid with a molecular structure small enough to slip between the protein fibers and re-lubricate the matrix from within. And that is exactly what neatsfoot oil is. The fatty acid profile of neatsfoot oil, primarily oleic acid and palmitic acid, is structurally almost identical to the sebaceous oil that animal skin produces naturally. When you apply it to leather, something remarkable happens at the fiber level. The collagen does not just absorb the oil the way a dry sponge absorbs water. It responds to it. The protein chains, which have been compressed and brittle from dehydration, begin to relax. The microfractures that have been spreading through the fiber matrix begin to close as the rehydrated collagen swells back toward its original dimensions. A study published in the Journal of the American Leather Chemists Association confirmed that neatsfoot oil penetrates collagen fiber bundles at up to 3 times the depth of silicone-based alternatives, 3 times deeper, into the part of the leather that actually determines whether it lasts 5 years or 50. Now add raw apple cider vinegar to the mixture. Vinegar is acetic acid, but raw apple cider vinegar, the unfiltered kind with what is called the mother still suspended in it, contains not just acetic acid, but a range of enzymes and organic acids that act as a gentle natural solvent. When you apply it to weathered leather, it dissolves the oxidized surface layer, the dull, grayish, dead finish sitting on top of the grain, without touching the healthy collagen underneath. It is the difference between stripping paint off a wall and taking the wall with it. The vinegar takes only what is already dead. What is underneath is exposed, clean, and ready to absorb. The third ingredient is pure beeswax. Beeswax melts at approximately 145 degrees Fahrenheit and resolidifies at room temperature into a soft, flexible barrier. When blended into the neatsfoot oil while still liquid and allowed to cool into the leather as the oil absorbs, the wax migrates to the surface and forms a breathable seal over the freshly lubricated collagen. It repels moisture intrusion. It blocks UV degradation. It prevents the oil from evaporating back out of the fiber. Without the wax, the oil treatment lasts weeks. With the wax, it lasts years. The total cost of these 3 ingredients at any farm supply store or hardware store is under $10 for enough material to treat every piece of leather in your house. Under $2 per application at any reasonable scale. Now, before I walk you through exactly how to mix and apply this formula, I need to stop and tell you something. This video covers one formula, one ingredient combination, one specific restoration method. What I have spent the last several months putting together goes much further than this. Because leather is not the only material the industry decided was more profitable broken than fixed. The complete restoration vault I have compiled contains everything that has been quietly removed from public knowledge across every category of home materials maintenance. The leather section alone contains 12 formulas for full-grain leather, bonded leather, suede, nubuck, patent leather, and tooled leather, including a rebonding technique for delaminating leather that furniture restorers currently charge $300 per cushion to perform. There is a formula in that section that luxury handbag resale shops use on $4,000 bags before putting them back on the shelf at full retail price. There is a shoe restoration method that working cobblers have kept inside their trade since the Great Depression. Beyond leather, there are wood restoration formulas, stone and grout revival techniques, cast iron restoration methods, fabric revival compounds, rust conversion formulas that mechanics use and that you have never seen on a hardware store shelf. All of it in one place. No padding, no vague instructions. Exact ingredients, exact ratios, exact application steps, tested on real materials in real conditions. The link is in the description directly below this video. But stay right here, because the application method for this formula matters almost as much as the formula itself. And what comes in the next few minutes is the part that the leather care industry really does not want demonstrated on camera. So why is this formula not sold in every shoe store, furniture shop, and auto detailer in the country? The global leather care product market was valued at $4.3 billion in 2023. In the United States alone, consumers spend over $600 million every year on leather conditioners, cleaners, restoration kits, and protective sprays. The average American household that owns a leather sofa replaces it within 7 to 10 years. Not because leather wears out, because the products sold to maintain it are designed to delay that replacement just long enough for you to believe they are working, and not long enough to actually prevent it. A leather sofa properly maintained with penetrating oil from the day it was purchased will last 40 to 50 years. There are leather club chairs in British gentlemen's clubs that are over 120 years old. Still supple, still structurally intact, still in daily use. Not because they are made of better leather than your sofa, because they have been maintained by a house porter with a tin of neatsfoot oil and a cotton cloth on a regular schedule for over a century. No branded product, no professional service, no appointment required. The replacement cycle that drives billions in annual furniture sales is not a natural consequence of leather aging. It is the engineered result of a maintenance product industry that profits from the leather's slow death. Now here's the mechanism that keeps this specific formula buried. You cannot patent neatsfoot oil. It has been rendered from cattle bones since the Middle Ages. You cannot patent apple cider vinegar. It has been produced through natural fermentation since ancient Babylon. You cannot patent beeswax. Bees have been producing it for 30 million years. There is no proprietary molecule, no trade secret to file, no intellectual property to protect, license, or use to build a distribution monopoly. And what cannot be patented cannot generate repeat licensing revenue. What cannot be licensed cannot be used to lock out competitors. What cannot lock out competitors cannot build the kind of brand dominance that pays for television advertising. The entire business model of the leather care industry, the $600 million American market, the $4.3 billion global market, depends entirely on one thing. You believing that leather care requires specialized, expensive, branded products with names you recognize from magazine advertisements and influencer sponsorships. Products whose active ingredient is the same fatty acid chemistry that cattle bone renderers discovered before the printing press existed, repackaged in a premium bottle with a 600% markup and a 30-day money-back guarantee that you will never actually use. And the leather furniture manufacturers have an incentive that goes even further than the product companies. Every sofa that cracks and gets replaced is a sofa sale. Every car interior that dries out and needs professional reconditioning is a service booking. The manufacturers of leather furniture are in many cases the same corporate families that supply the leather treatment products that fail to protect it. The replacement cycle is not a flaw in their business model. It is the business model. Think about what happens when you sit down tonight and search online how to fix cracked leather sofa. The first results are paid advertisements for $35 leather repair kits from brands with television budgets. Below them are sponsored articles from home improvement publications recommending professional leather restoration services. Below them are product comparison pages that appear to be independent reviews, but are funded by affiliate commissions from the same brands being compared. The $2 formula is buried somewhere on page 4. Inside a forum post from 2009, Written by a retired cobbler in rural Montana who learned it from his father, who learned it from his father, and who shared it for free on an internet forum because he genuinely could not imagine a world where people had forgotten something so basic. He did not know he was competing with $4 billion in marketing. The algorithm rewards dollars. The search results reflect dollars. The television segments, the magazine features, the influencer posts, all dollars. The formula this cobbler shared for free because it was simply true has been losing that fight for 70 years. Until right now. Before I give you the exact formula and application method, I need to be completely honest with you about what this can and cannot do. Because most content on this topic skips the limitations entirely. And that dishonesty is part of why people distrust DIY methods and go back to buying branded products. So here's the complete truth. Neatsfoot oil will darken light-colored leather. On cream, white, ivory, and very pale tan leathers, the warming effect of the oil will shift the color noticeably toward amber. On those colors, and only those colors, apply a small amount to a completely hidden area, wait 24 hours, and evaluate before proceeding to the full piece. On every dark leather, black, brown, cognac, burgundy, chocolate, navy, the color shift is either invisible or actively enhances the depth of the grain in a way that looks intentional and professional. This formula will not repair leather where the top coat has completely separated from the hide and is peeling away in sheets. That is a different process, a rebonding technique, and it requires a different set of materials covered separately. And there is a safety consideration that almost no one mentions when discussing oil-based leather treatments. Neatsfoot oil, like all long-chain fatty acid oils, generates mild heat during the oxidation phase of absorption. Rags or cloth saturated with neatsfoot oil should never be left crumpled or bunched in a pile while drying. The heat generated by oxidation in a compressed pile of oil-saturated cloth can reach the ignition point of the fabric itself. Always spread your application rags completely flat on a non-flammable surface outdoors while they dry, or submerge them in water in a sealed metal container before disposal. This is not a theoretical risk. It is the same chemistry responsible for several documented workshop fires over the past century. Apply this formula correctly and it is completely safe, completely effective, and completely permanent. Here is exactly how to make this formula and apply it correctly. Every step matters. Follow them in order. Pure neatsfoot oil. And this distinction is critical. The label must say 100% pure neatsfoot oil. Not neatsfoot oil compound. Compound versions contain petroleum distillates added to reduce cost at manufacture, and those petroleum additives will accelerate the breakdown of collagen fibers over time, making the cracking worse within a year. Pure neatsfoot oil only. Available at farm supply stores, leather craft suppliers, and online for approximately $6 to $8 per pint. Raw apple cider vinegar, unfiltered, with the mother. The cloudy, sediment-heavy kind. Not white distilled vinegar, not filtered apple cider vinegar. The enzymatic content in raw, unfiltered ACV is what gives it the ability to dissolve oxidized surface finish without damaging healthy collagen beneath. Bragg's is the most widely available brand. Any equivalent will work. Cost approximately $4 for a large bottle. Pure beeswax pellets. Not paraffin wax, not soy wax, not candle wax. Pure beeswax. Available at candle supply stores, farm supply stores, and online. Cost approximately $3 per pound, which will last you through dozens of applications. Work in a ventilated area. Lay down old newspaper or a drop cloth beneath the piece you are treating. Have 2 clean cotton cloths ready, one for application, one for buffing. Cotton only. Microfiber traps the wax component and distributes it unevenly. Measure 2 tablespoons of beeswax pellets into a small glass jar. A mason jar works perfectly. Set that jar inside a pot of water on the stove over medium heat. This is a double boiler setup. Never melt beeswax over direct heat. It is flammable at high temperatures, and direct heat creates unpredictable hotspots. In the double boiler, the water temperature caps the wax at 212 degrees, which is well within the safe melting range of 145 to 160 degrees for beeswax. The pellets will melt completely within 5 to 8 minutes. Remove the jar from the heat immediately once the wax is fully liquid. Working quickly because the wax will begin to cool and re-solidify within minutes, add 4 tablespoons of pure neatsfoot oil to the melted wax. Stir constantly and firmly for 60 full seconds. The mixture will begin to turn from clear to slightly opaque as the oil and wax emulsify together. Then add 1 tablespoon of raw apple cider vinegar and stir for another 30 seconds. The mixture will cloud slightly more as the vinegar emulsifies into the oil-wax blend. Pour the mixture into a wide-mouth glass jar and set it aside at room temperature. Do not refrigerate. Do not accelerate cooling. Allow it to cool naturally over 30 to 45 minutes. As it cools, the mixture will solidify from a liquid into a soft, spreadable salve, consistency somewhere between a thick lotion and a soft lip balm. If it sets too firm, the room is too cold, and you can warm the jar briefly in your hands before application. This is your restoration compound. Always test first. Apply a small amount of the compound to a completely hidden area of the leather piece, the underside of a sofa cushion, the interior heel of a boot, a back panel on a handbag. Wait 30 minutes and examine for unexpected color shift. On dark leathers, there will be no visible change from testing. On light leathers, you will see any warming effect clearly on the test patch before committing to the full piece. Dip a clean cotton cloth into the salve and scoop out a small amount, approximately the size of a quarter. Apply to the leather in firm circular motions working in sections of approximately 1 square foot at a time. As you work the compound into the grain, you will see the surface change almost immediately. The dull, oxidized, grayish finish on the surface begins to dissolve as the vinegar component lifts it away. Beneath it, the natural grain of the leather emerges, richer, darker, with depth that the oxidized layer was completely obscuring. Simultaneously, the neatsfoot oil is penetrating through the exposed grain and beginning to reach the collagen fibers. Work methodically. Every section. Do not skip areas. The sections you skip will be visible in the finished result. Allow the first application to absorb for 15 to 20 minutes. Then take your second clean, dry cotton cloth and buff the surface firmly. This removes any excess compound that has not been absorbed and has pooled on the surface, and it distributes the wax component evenly as a thin surface seal over the areas where oil has already penetrated below. At this point, after one coat, after 20 minutes, after a single buffing, the leather will already look different. You will already know this is working. 24 hours. Let the first coat cure fully. The oil needs time to complete its penetration into the fiber matrix, and the wax needs time to set into a stable surface seal. After 24 hours, apply a second coat using exactly the same method. The second coat reaches the collagen that the first coat softened and opened up. It deepens the restoration and doubles the longevity of the protective barrier. For a cracked leather sofa, begin with the seat cushions. That is where stress cracking is always most severe because it is the surface under the most consistent compression and flexion. Start there and you will see the most dramatic transformation first. Cracks that appear structural, deep fissures running across the grain, will visibly begin to close within 10 minutes of the first application as the rehydrating collagen fibers swell back toward their original dimensions. Not cosmetically filled, actually closing, because the fibers are alive again. For a leather car interior, work with the seat fully reclined to access the lower lumbar panel. That is always the first area to crack in car seats, because it receives the most UV exposure through the rear window and the least maintenance attention. Work the formula into door panels and the steering wheel last, because those surfaces are handled constantly and benefit most from the wax seal component of the second coat. For leather boots and shoes, stuff the toe with crumpled newspaper before beginning so the boot holds its natural shape while the oil penetrates. Remove the laces first. Work the compound into the toe box with extra pressure because that is where cracking always initiates, the flex point that bends with every step. Apply to the welt seam carefully because that is where moisture always enters first, and where stitching begins to fail on neglected boots. For leather handbags, stuff the bag with tissue paper or bubble wrap before treatment to maintain the structure while the leather softens and absorbs. Pay particular attention to the corners and handle attachment points. Those are the stress concentration areas where cracking always appears first. One batch of this formula, 2 tablespoons of wax, 4 tablespoons of oil, 1 tablespoon of vinegar, covers a full 3-cushion sofa completely, with compound left over for a second coat. That same batch covers a full vehicle interior. It covers 8 to 10 pairs of boots. It covers 4 to 6 handbags. Total material cost per application, under $2 when you factor standard usage quantities against the purchase price of the ingredients. A leather furniture restoration service will quote you between $180 and $450 for that sofa. An auto detailer offering leather reconditioning will charge $150 to $300 per vehicle interior. A cobbler performing a conditioning service will charge $40 to $80 per pair of boots. A luxury handbag restoration service will invoice $200 to $500 per bag. You just replaced every single one of those services for less than the cost of a cup of coffee in your own home in under an hour with 3 ingredients that your great-grandmother would have recognized from her own kitchen and workshop. And the finish does not sit on the surface waiting to chip or peel or fade. It lives inside the leather, because it is part of the leather now. This knowledge did not disappear because it stopped working. It disappeared because it worked so well that an entire industry, a $4 billion global industry, had no choice but to pretend it had never existed. For 5,000 years, human beings preserved leather with oil rendered from animals and acid fermented from grain. No corporation. No patent. No brand name on a label. No subscription. No influencer telling you which product to trust. Just chemistry that civilization figured out before writing existed and passed from one pair of hands to another for 100 generations. Your great-grandfather resoled his own boots. His father oiled the harness leather that kept the family farm running. His father's father made leather last a lifetime because there was no other option and because the formula was simply known. Written on nothing, forgotten by no one. And then somewhere between the post-war economic boom and the age of the television commercial, that chain broke. Not because the formula failed, Because someone realized it was worth more as a secret than as knowledge. Because a generation of homeowners who had grown up with craftsmen for fathers and grandfathers had children who grew up with brands instead. And the brands told those children that knowledge was complicated, that leather care required expertise, that the formula their grandfather used was outdated and probably dangerous and definitely inferior to whatever was in the new bottle with the new label and the new celebrity endorsement. It was not outdated. It was not inferior. It was not complicated. It was cheap. And cheap is the only thing a $4 billion industry cannot survive. The sofa you were about to replace could last another 20 years. The car interior you assumed was finished could be restored this weekend with an afternoon and 3 ingredients. The boots that belonged to someone you loved, someone you cannot bring yourself to throw away the last physical thing they wore and touched and walked in, those boots can be worn again. The leather did not fail you. The industry that sold you products designed to fail, that engineered the illusion of maintenance while guaranteeing the need for replacement, that industry failed you. And now you have the formula they spent 70 years hoping you would never find. It is not complicated enough to forget. 3 ingredients, equal parts oil and wax by weight. 1 small jar, 1 cotton cloth. 1 afternoon, that cracked leather sofa you have been avoiding looking at. That car seat you have been meaning to deal with. Those boots in the back of the closet. The leather did not die. It was just waiting for someone to remember what the industry spent 70 years trying to make us forget. If this changed how you see the leather in your home, share it with someone who is about to replace a sofa that is worth saving. Every share is one more person who does not have to throw away something their family used and loved because a product they trusted quietly let it die. Subscribe if you believe that knowledge belongs to people, not to the corporations that profit from keeping it buried. Leave a comment below and tell me what you are restoring first. The comments on this channel have become something worth reading. Real people, real pieces, real results. I want to see yours. And stay close, because what I am going to show you next makes this formula look like the introduction. There is a $3 compound, older than the United States, buried by an industry even larger than this one, that restores something found in every single home in America. And once you see it, you will never look at that thing the same way again.